Katie, today we are talking to Stephanie Cawthon about the National Disability Center for Student Success, and I'm really excited. This is a center that I'm sort of tangentially involved in as a faculty mentor, and they just do so much. It's been a pleasure for me to just see all the incredible research and outreach that they're doing. So I'm very excited to get started.
Yeah, me too. And I'll say that I've worked with Stephanie for almost 20 years.
Wow.
She works on the art side. She's an educational psychologist working on the art side and bringing some of her deep knowledge of disability, inclusion, access, all that work to my work in the arts. But I'm really excited to be a listener and a learner to hear more about the big part of her own research agenda. So let's get started.
Sounds great. All right, here we go. Welcome to the Other Side of Campus, the podcast that shares stories of how the University of Texas at Austin is engaged with our local, state, and national community. My name is Jen Moon. I'm a professor in the College of Natural Sciences.
And I am Katie Dawson. I'm an associate professor of theater in the College of Fine Arts. Today, Jen and I are so delighted to welcome a friend, a colleague, and a professor at the University of Texas at Austin, Dr. Stephanie Cawthon. Stephanie is a deaf researcher, author, and speaker who is a professor at UT Austin in the Department of Educational Psychology with a courtesy appointment in special education. Stephanie's internationally renowned research examines the multiple factors that affect how deaf and disabled people succeed in classrooms, at workplaces, and throughout their lives. She has published 3 books, many articles, and also done an edited book series. Stephanie works with faculty and students at UT Austin as the founder and executive director of the National Disability Center for Student Success. And I am also delighted to say on a personal level that Stephanie is also the director of research for the Drama for Schools program, which is a project that we lead together, a partnership between the College of Education and the College of Fine Arts, where we work to think about how students and teachers can improve the learning culture of classrooms through the arts. But today, we are here to really focus on Stephanie's work and impact in and with the disabled community. And I will send it to Jen for the very first question.
Thanks, Katie. So, Stephanie, so excited to be on this side of the microphone with you. We've worked together, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to have you on the podcast to tell us a bit about the amazing work you're doing. But before we get to that, I thought maybe we could ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to a career working in the field of disability and access in higher education.
Thank you both so much for welcoming me here today. I'm thrilled to be with you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of a conversation like this about how we can create bridges and really build networks across fields. So, for me, I have always positioned myself in spaces of intersectionality. It hasn't just been spaces that were separated out. It was always something that was intersectional. So for me, I grew up with hearing loss. I still have hearing loss and have experienced that for many years. I was speech delayed growing up. Sign language was not something that I acquired until much later in life. I did not have access to most things growing up. It was actually pretty isolating for me going to school. And so with my personal background, that really impacted how my initial research was shaped. It was about language development first. I started there. And then secondarily, it was deaf language development and acquisition and those skills. I think, well, I do focus on deaf and hard of hearing children within education and teaching and assessments and how we approach the learning and what that looks like for deaf and hard of hearing students. And then that sort of moved me into adolescence and young adults, focusing on those kiddos. And just really, I've been very curious about their transition from school into work through college and post-secondary spaces. So I think for me, that's my sweet spot is those adolescents and those that age group right there, those young adults transitioning into the workplace or post-secondary spaces. So thinking about transition and the fact that there's not just one path, there are multiple options in terms of how we get there. Training and development is not a one-way thing. So applying what we know about that to the communities of disability, and then specifically for me, designing systems that specifically apply to deaf and hard of hearing people. We can't just design one system. That doesn't work. It's not a one size fits all situation. And so for me, that focus has helped me understand both in the K-12 settings and also policy and structure of post-secondary spaces, what works, what doesn't work, where we can improve access for all students in these spaces. That's really shaped my work over the years. So that's how I got here. Here I am.
Stephanie, I hear you speaking to the word access. That's a big through line in some of the things you just said. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you would define an accessible learning experience or an accessible learning environment?
Certainly. I've been thinking about that concept for quite a while now, access and accessibility. And it's not the same thing. Access is more about, do you have a seat at the table? Are you in the room when those conversations are happening? And then accessibility is more on a general level. Yes, there's a seat at the table that needs to be available for you, but there's so many other things to consider that are happening around that moment of learning. And so there are some images that I typically use to represent these different concepts, and maybe we can put that in the show's transcripts, a link to these uh, kind of quick tips. And so accessibility is an opportunity to engage with three different things. People, peers, students, however you'd like to categorize the group of people. But then ideas, thinking, information, and it's not just learning or the learning materials, it's also the discussion and the dialogue surrounding the materials. And then the third piece I consider is yourself. How do you feel connected to others? And also thinking like, do people accept me? Do people want me here? Should I be here? Now, can I express what I have to say while I'm here? So accessibility really kind of brings those three together, and that's my basic definition of access and accessibility.
Can I do one follow on? I'm really interested in that definition, Stephanie, because it reminds me that everything you describe is good for everyone, right? Everyone does benefit from those three big ideas.
Mhm.
I think your phrase might be disability is human, but it really reminds me of that piece. So I just really appreciate that clarification.
Yeah, and if I may follow up to your follow up, the assumption from most people is that access is equal to accommodations, that equates. And I completely 100% believe that is not true. Accommodations are literally the bare minimum. They are, that does not make a thing accessible. um, Going above and beyond is really how we achieve accessibility. And so having an understanding of accommodations is great, but for me, that's the bare minimum. I do not find them to be the same.
Appreciate.
Yeah, that's an important clarification. And I can sort of even visualize that like an accommodation are steps you might take to get to accessibility. And that's the goal. Um, I appreciate hearing that. So, my engagement with you recently is through the National Disability Center for Student Success. And I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the center and what are some milestones on your journey with that organization?
I always appreciate your willingness to come to my parties. I always love it.
You
Oh, I
have the
love
best
it. It's so
parties.
fun. It's well, thank you for that. So the center in DCSS, really the goal is to support disabled students at colleges and universities in their success through research and then application to practice. So when we were first envisioning the center and its design, I knew that we needed to think about what the research needs were, where are the gaps, where and how can we fill them, and then also how to approach the methods, people, structures, organizations, and how do we invite people in to participate, like you? Um, because that needs to be really thoughtful. So for me, really thinking about how we've built a community of practice, so to speak. It's research and mentorship and how to develop that. And I honestly, I've got to give credit where credit's due. I mean, Katie, gosh, the drama school, literally everything it's been almost 20 years and it all applies still today. And I've really taken all of that in. And I think about that often in terms of structure and the relationships that are built, what it could and should look like, and the intention of the experience. And we sort of reiterate regularly intentionality and being intentional. I've got a colleague named Sarah Schley, and she is now at Oregon State University. But Sarah and I use that model of student-led experiences with faculty in terms of access and higher quality teaching through the lens of the student perspective and not prioritizing the faculty. It was co-mentoring, and it sort of put both people on equal footing in that partnership. And it's a collaboration with a capital C. And my goal was, to figure out how to do that well. And so when the RFP application was available, I took a look at it and was really trying to decide how to approach that because they wanted a research center and they didn't care about design or collaboration and this whole capital C collab business. So how do I fit this in within that structure, within that expectation, but really to meet my goals, my values, ours as a center? Like, how do I do both? So the center itself is the first ever center for the focusing on disabled students ever in post-secondary spaces. I mean, it's a huge win. It's very exciting. It's a 5-year grant. Yay, yay, yay. We're in year 3 of 5 now. So I'd like to say we're about halfway through, a little better maybe. And we're just kind of trying to build quickly at this point because we want we don't want to get to year 4 and be like, wait, what? What are we like? Are we just not going to figure it out? So we did some heavy lifting in year 2. Now it feels like we're expanding and building out right now. We've got 3 parts to the center. First is obvious. It's a research center. So there's research. We always often say 10 study sets in 5 years. But we have done 9 already, and we're just now in year 3. So that's what I mean when I say we are building this real quick. Um, we haven't finished everything, no, but we have at least gotten into 9 of those study sets. I'm really seeing a lot of emphasis on student perspective and faculty perspective, mostly on access and disability, on success and achievement for disabled students in these spaces. And what does that mean? What does it look like? And then the research agenda is also meant to take a look at some key areas. Disclosing disabilities is a big one because it's not always obvious how it's going to go. People think, oh, access accommodations means, ha, we're accessible. People often think that disclosing your disability is easy. It's no big deal. No, it's huge. And so what our research is showing is it's a very low percentage of disabled students. They literally say nothing. They disclose nothing. It's far less than 50% of folks who disclose. They would rather say nothing. So we notice there's a big gap there, right? Because if you're not disclosing, and now we're trying to really spotlight those institutions that are doing it well, doing it right. It's not only supporting their students, of course, but it's also what's happening now, what we're spotlighting, the things that are being done well, being done right. I mean, we know there are so many schools and people who are trying. Absolutely. So we want to spotlight that. We're doing some case study models now in spotlighting what is going well. And through all of that, we are focusing on mentorship. As I mentioned, we have a partnership between students and faculty that are paired together. Jen, you know, you're one of our faculty mentors. And we've got 6 total across the university, and they are paired with different students from different backgrounds. Some are graduates, some are undergrad students. So we're really trying to give these opportunities to give folks a chance to build on that relationship and in these environments. So, I mean, I think it's working. I, I feel like the students and the faculty really appreciate it too. I mean, but you can't plan this. This is one of those things that's just so organic in nature, and it just happens. You can't control a relationship, right? And I love it because it's people led and it's organic and it just happens. And the last thing I'd like to say too is outreach. That's another piece of the center. We got social media, of course. We've got a website. 70% of our budget goes to research and 30% is outreach. And that's a lot really for a research center to be able to earmark that amount. It's typically not that much for the outreach piece. So we do research translation, it's very website heavy. We do some town hall spaces. A lot of community engagement is where we put our focus. We have a learning hub that has literally everything, all of our research articles, all the things, so people can find what they need just right there online. So it's a lot. We got a lot going on over here. A lot going on at the center.
Wow. And when I hear you describe, Stephanie, all those different pieces, particularly that last piece there about outreach, but also the mentorship, I mean, all of it, it's so rich. And it makes me think about impact. I mean, there's so many different kinds of impacts that I think you just named. So, in addition to some of those outputs, of course, we have research. We're at a research university, and that is always the expectation, though I know of you that you are someone who embeds her research in really meaningful, practical actions for people and resources that help them. But I'm interested in what are some of the research findings from the center that you feel like have had an impact, and that could be on your thinking or others thinking maybe about how to approach accessible learning environments in higher ed. What is kind of the big impact you're seeing thus far, knowing that you have a long trajectory still to go?
Well, it's really interesting that you asked about the impact on different levels because I realize I don't know how it's impacting people within the center quite yet because we're not measuring that directly, right? So we did a pre-test or a pilot early on for 1 year. We did measure that, but since these past couple of years, we have not measured that. So I guess someone should do a dissertation on us. Hmm. Anyway, I'm just saying. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, so impact though. I think there's a couple of categories. Mindset is really shifting the mindset, and it's kind of our work touches all of that directly, indirectly, things that we're reading, different chapters in the book, whatever it is that we're busy doing, we often focus on mindset, and disabled people can do things. It's the system that needs to shift and evolve and grow to meet that expectation and that mindset. Because 1 in 4 people at any given time have a disability. A quarter. Our research shows that a half of our students say, "Hey, hi, I have a disability." Now, mental health is a big one, right? And so that's meaningful, but it's still So it's become so much more common than people even realize often. So when we design learning for everyone, it shouldn't just be about, you know, able-bodied people and the how the mindset used to be. It needs to be, we need to keep in mind that, hey, half of our students say that they have a disability. That's who we need to design for. So again, mindset. And another thing that has really started a conversation around disabilities is it's not just one person. It's not just one experience. I mean, we've got data on a national level. So this is huge in our field right now. I mean, it's big. There's representatives of two-year colleges, community colleges, four-year universities, different sizes, different types of universities. So I think it's really important to represent the nation well. It's very interesting because we do have all of this data. And so with that in mind, our examples are real live examples. It's real life, especially our spotlights that we do. We pull those directly from people who are in the weeds, boots on the ground, working every day, not just all of our happy, shiny examples, not at all. We're down in the, blood soaked and dirty. I mean, we are down in there, boots on the ground, digging in the weeds to pull these great real life examples because we want to make sure that people see themselves in the examples. That applies to everyone, right? Because I love that. Campus spotlight, I love it. Administrators, faculty, these people are, everyone's willing to show where the pain points are, where are the struggles, what are we really dealing with? So I think that's going to have a huge impact as we move forward. I really think that those stories are critical. The third thing, and part of what our research has identified, is developing measures. Like if we can't find a good measure of this, that, or the other for access, or we can't find it for disability, we have no more excuses now because we're working on developing these measures. All right, we're building them. Each time we build a study, we have a measure released. And it's all of the criteria are out there. It's really high quality um, research, and really it's a good foundation that people need. So we're filling in those gaps. And we're already seeing people say, hey, hi, could we use that measure of campus access, for example? We've got our nursing program and we want to take a look. We want to use that measure. In fact, this one example is an online nursing program, and they have recently published a paper that's been accepted with that measure that we developed. I mean, it's awesome. It's awesome. Again, you can't plan this kind of thing. It just happened to be available. There it was. They used it. They've now published.
That's fantastic. What a great outcome to be able to look at so early on the success of this center. I mean, as you say, 2.5 years in, already some really tangible, hugely beneficial outcomes. I'm curious about, and you mentioned a little bit about this, so I'm going to ask maybe about a specific example of what kinds of conversations or topics do you think have a significant impact on how faculty are designing their courses with accessibility in mind?
It's very interesting. I'm a social scientist. I do, education. So what's very mindful or impactful for me is the STEM field. That's really struck me. So access issues are really difficult. Like biology faculty, it's s- this statistics software, math and equations. How are students interacting with these courses and in these classes? And in the STEM fields, it seems like those are some difficult things to solve, and they're not just real apparent. We have some students who have really taken a deep dive in that for themselves, and they tell us stories like they're very frustrated regularly. There's just so much that needs to happen just from the ground up to be successful in those type of classrooms. And so I think that is a high need currently. So that one's a big one. And whatever we're doing every day, we're doing the same things daily, but it's not really working. It's not helping that group of students, of disabled students, to be successful. So what? what could we do different?
Speaking of which, we're having a big conversation right now in the College of Natural Sciences in the STEM fields, right? About how often we rely on handwritten notes, equations, worked out problems that are handwritten that are not truly accessible. And how do we take years worth of notes that we have created over time for our students and make them such that they can be accessible? I think about my own field, biology. A lot of what we're talking about are things that are in images. Maybe it's scientific data, maybe it's a microscopy, you know, image, and we're talking about things that we see in this image and how to characterize them and whatnot. How do we make that accessible to someone with a sight impairment, and so they understand conceptually what's going on? So there is a lot of challenges that we have in the STEM fields, and anyway, so grateful to you in the center for working on a national level on how we can do a group think across the country and figure out how we can really tackle this in the STEM fields. I really resonate with what you say.
Yeah.
I, uh, this idea of group think makes me also think about the students as part of that thinking process. And as someone who's been really lucky to work with you, Stephanie, for a long time, you have taught me a lot about how to bring student perspectives into everything I do. It's one of the many things I feel I've learned from you. Can you share a story a bit about of a project where students and community members partner together to create change through the center? How are students in that space for you?
I mean, where are they not? But I can tell you something that happened recently. I think really right now, AI being a hot topic. So I've had a relationship with the tech folks here on campus at UT for a while. I mean, years, right? Many, many years, 15 years at least. Progressing up through the system and learning things. We know each other pretty well, right? So now when something is happening, and I'm like, oh, we need to pay attention, I will immediately text and be like, hey, hello. So I think things that are, AI is really impacting most everyone right now. And so we're working on building a collaboration with a team of at least 8 people, undergrads, all the way through graduate students to doctoral, postdoc students doing their dissertation, associate professors. We've got faculty involved, some administrative staff, and everyone seems to be interested in terms of accessibility and AI and how they are playing together. So that process has got to include students because they're on the front lines, right? Like they they know more than we do most of the time. S- So we need to learn from them. The literature just isn't there, so we cannot learn from the research. We need to learn from them. We've got to depend on the students to learn what we need to know. So we started developing a survey for a national at the national level to understand AI better. And honestly, the students are the most important contributors to this process, and they will be. I mean, I can design the the process, but I'm a design girl, right? That's where I'm at. That I'm the designer, but the content, I have no idea. I'm just the design girl. They are going to have to give me the content. So it's very interesting to see them really jump right in and take the lead on this process. And so students are really, really diving in with that. So we'll see how this goes. It's coming soon.
I would want to share this experience I had speaking about AI and students with accommodation. I was talking to a student with autism, and they shared that they're using AI to interpret the tone of an email, not only that they might receive from, a colleague or a professor, but also check the tone of their response so that they know they're responding appropriately to the email. And I thought that was just really interesting, using AI to understand what the tone and intention is so that their communication is what they intend it to be. I thought that was a cool thing. I just wanted to share that.
That is cool.
I'm thinking a little bit as we talk about students and students as members of a larger system and our institution. Um, Stephanie, what do you think institutions, including UT, but it could be other higher, I know you work at across higher ed in lots of spaces and places, but what would you recommend? What do you think institutions should put in place to support accessibility at a systemic level?
I think the experience here is pretty cool and interesting because the pilot I mentioned earlier, one thing that was really emphasized was the circle of support and its expansion, students and faculty being kind of a smaller, more intimate type relationship, but then expanding that circle as necessary. And when the access question pops up, then we expand it. And then people know who to ask. They know who's in that circle. Then staff, IT, enrollment, people at the dorm staff, just making sure that everyone knows that who's here and what, and that the expectation is that they are able to reach out. So setting that up with a advisory council type feel and sharing information kind of across those departments is great because that means that accessibility is not just the responsibility of the ADA office or the compliance offices, it's the responsibility of everyone. And how we accomplish that is important. When you've got an administration that is really emphasizing success of students, how do we define that to then include access and accessibility? I think these are important things and opportunities for all. Right now, we're still seeing it's pretty typical across the country that people assume it will be taken care of as long as they satisfy the legal requirement. Everything is fine. We're good. It does not include culture of the disability, the identity of the person, campus culture, expectations in terms of how teachers are meant to approach their job or staff approaching their job in those different departments that I outlined. So setting up expectations for accessibility and the definition of access and who everyone is. I know sometimes it feels kind of woo-woo, like I get it, but at the same time, we've got to practice it. It's got because there's such a huge impact for all of this. You know, if you design it, if, for example, let's say there's a new program for student success. Let's just say it's a summer training class situation. So fine, let's think about accessibility from like an opportunity perspective from the disabled students. Can a blind student take your course? Can someone in a wheelchair take your course? Is it going to be accessible? Don't think about it after the fact when the students get on site or enroll, and then you got to take 15 steps back to try to rework it. We that's not the answer. So to set up, if there's an expectation to have an accessibility plan from the beginning, that is a great way to approach it. And I think it's true for teaching for sure, but I think at a systemic level and so many different individuals being involved. I mean, well, there's over 100,000 teachers here. Like, how are we going to standardize expectations? I get it. It's tough, but we need to make sure that there is something in place where we can say, hey, here's the model. This has been developed. This will help you in your approach. So I feel like that's a systemic situation, and that's a systems responsibility.
I'll say one thing about that. It's small, Stephanie, but you make me think about the power of shared vocabulary and shared method. How when we all are working from a similar set of goals and vocabulary about those goals, how that just allows us to engage more quickly or to make adjustments or to know what we're doing. So I really appreciate that a lot.
Yeah. And to follow up with the one thing that I forgot to mention is when thinking about the data in terms of students, right now the only data about disabled students has been collected is just for accommodation use. That that's all that's out there. And it's private and it doesn't run across time. Like each semester is separated out. You can't really understand a whole lot when you're getting those bits and pieces. So gathering data about student success, there's, with the variable being disability and experience, it's so important to have all of that together.
This has been an incredible conversation, and I've learned so much, even though I'm sort of tangentially involved in the project. I just love hearing you talk and thinking about all the many aspects that are important for all the things that you're doing at the center. I was going to ask you, it's a National Disability Center. How has the National Disability Center's research impacted the larger community outside the university?
Most of the time, we don't know, actually. I mean, honestly, we want to get those comments, we want to know, but we can't assume to know. And I think there are three things that are pretty apparent to me. I think that graduate students and undergrad students who finish with us and then leave, they are ready to go. They are passionate. They are ready to change the world. And it's true. They are really ready. So I'm seeing that impact on their journey and out in the field once they leave here. We have a paper that we published recently with another grad student about how to mentor them well. And I think that'll be a valuable resource for our faculty in the future because it helps the students share in the process and how to approach that relationship. I mean, students who are in grad school have been here for a while. Sometimes they've been here 6, 7, 8 years, right? So those relationships are really, really important. So that paper, I think, once it gets out, I think that it will impact many, many people in a positive way. Also, related to faculty, kind of setting up different expectations in terms of how we talk about accommodations and access and accessibility. Because right now it's just kind of in isolation. Like I don't know who to talk to um, across campus about classes, or even within my department. I feel like people feel sort of siloed, and they don't even know who to have the conversation with. So we're trying to set up a structure and a model for the campus as a whole, like a workshop that's just real talk about accommodations and situations and issues that arise in the classroom, out in the field. I think that structure is available now in Toolkit, and we're really focusing on that. Yeah, Toolkit's pretty nice, and I think we're going to start to see people downloading that and using that, so we'll be able to know that. Um, Another thing is when I or other people reach out to different folks and their campus visitors, or like when I go a place for a day or two, possibly three, we be that creates an opportunity to have a discussion on a campus level, involve students, faculty, staff, administrators alike. Because, for example, I went to Ohio State University recently, and excuse me, I forgot the heavens. It's the Ohio State University. I can't just say Ohio State University. I know, Katie, I forgot. forgive me, the Ohio State University. Anyway, we had an opportunity to bring everybody together and talk about what does the campus need? And they said retention, keeping students. They were leaving after the first year. And then they had a pipeline leak, so to speak. So just really kind of digging in and figuring out some concrete structures and strategies in terms of how to retain students, because that impacts expectation, not just there in the state of Ohio, but also universities struggle. We're noticing that they're struggling with retention. It seems to be a big issue with funding, financial aid, all the things. So I feel like that model has really helped impact a number of places across the country.
Well, Stephanie, I mean, I think thinking about those broader impacts in universities, in the students who are coming through our programs, and certainly I think from our own university here. I mean, I think that those different levels of impact are deeply meaningful and varied in the ways that the best kind of impacts are. Um, I'm going to use the very last question here to actually ask Jen Moon, who I know has been personally impacted, and she's spoken to me a lot about how important this work has been for her with you. Jen, do you mind just wrapping us up with a little bit of what has been a personal impact for you in getting to be a part of the projects with the center?
Well, there's been several. I think for my own professional development, it's been really important on a few levels. One, there's a faculty cadre component to this. And so being able to talk with other faculty about accessibility and accommodations and whatnot, that's just that community has been important for me. Secondly, as my affiliation with the center is that as a faculty mentor, we will talk, I think, in the next episode with my mentee, although that language is also kind of misleading because we really emphasize the co-mentorship of that relationship. And that's been hugely important to me, to get to know someone and understand their challenges in our current system. Um, we talked earlier in this conversation about how important it is to get the student perspective. And that's been really important. It's shaped how I think about teaching. As Stephanie mentioned earlier, approaching my course design not in a retroactive way, which is I design it and then, oh, wait, I've got a student with accommodations. Now I got to fix some stuff or do things differently, but rather go in intentionally with how can I design the course that it is already as accessible as I can make it, from the start. Ideally, we earlier, Stephanie had mentioned that many students don't reveal that they have a disability. And so I'm thinking about all of those students in my class that aren't revealing that they have a disability. How can I make that easier for them so that maybe, it'd be great if we can make sure by talking to them what accommodations they might need. But if they don't feel comfortable revealing that, how can I make my class accessible from the get-go? And so that's really been my goal. And it is hard. I teach STEM class, but it's been really helpful for me to have these conversations openly and honestly and with some vulnerability about how I can go about doing that. So it's been incredibly impactful and I've learned so much. And I really appreciate all the work the center is doing.
I think that brings us to the end of this episode. Stephanie, we thank you so much for spending the time with us today, telling us more about the center, and I think more importantly, telling us a little bit about you and how who you are is so much a part of your work. And I think in some ways your work benefits so much from you. So there's an exchange back and forth there that is very powerful, and those who know you well know that. So thank you for joining us on the other side of campus. It has been a true delight.
As we end our program today, I want to extend a thank you to our interpreters today, Jennifer and Amanda. Thank you so much for your work, and we appreciate you being here.